Welcome, everyone, to the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs fan. Joining me, as always, my winger, Ricky Squid Vibe. Squid, never a shortage of stories in the world of hockey. This week, no exception. First off, good road trip for the Leafs so far. 3 or 4 points against two very worthy opponents in Colorado and Vegas, and a couple hours away from taking on the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah, they're playing pretty good hockey. I'm pretty happy with the way that they're playing in both ends of the rink. 200-foot game. You got guys. Kerfoot's playing lights out lately. Mikheyev, since he's come back, has played extremely well. I mean, everybody's playing pretty good. But I'm still worried about the depth on defense. I think getting another defenseman with some experience, I think, would really help them going down the stretch and into the playoffs in case there's injuries or anything else.
Wow, what about this kid he's on COVID protocol and going right in Arizona tonight, Jacob Chychrun. His name is bouncing around. He's exactly the type of guy I think that would fit in this Toronto lineup perfectly. Unfortunately, there's about 15 or 16 other teams that would do the same and are taking notice as well. We're not the only ones who've spotted this guy. And his contract's very friendly at 4.6 for the next 3 years, 3.5 years, including this year. That to me, boy, that's the one I wanted to see them make. I would love to see them do something.
I'd love to see them make that, Michael. But I mean, what they're going to want for him is going to be outrageous.
And this is where it gets really, really difficult. Now, we've thrown his name around before. Number 88 scored a beauty last night on probably one of the sickest passes you're ever going to see from Morgan Raleigh in that first goal. And he scored an absolute dandy in the shootout in William Nylander we're referring to. But it's come to a point where if you're going to be physical in the playoffs, you're going to have to toughen up in that top six. And unfortunately, somebody's going to have to go. Is his number going to get called, or is there going to be 16? Like one of them at some point, some change will have to be, because you have nothing else to trade off. Now, the only thing with Arizona, they're probably accumulating draft picks more as they are players. They've got 20 million in cap space, so they've got tons of room to acquire players. But do you do some sort of package? I know it sounds crazy with Nylander playing like he is, but I'll make this one point. Just remember Scotty Bowman going into Detroit. He was not a big fan of Steve Yzerman's 50-goal game, and he was quite willing to move him. But Steve Yzerman scored 23 goals. We've talked about this before, the year that he won his first cup.
Yeah, played a little bit more of a 200-foot game. He became a real good defensive player as well as offensively. And the only thing I will say about that is that Kyle Dubas at the first of the year was adamant that the top 4 guys are not going anywhere.
Yep.
Now, is he going to go back on what he said and perhaps use one of those chips to acquire a defenseman? I'm not really sure whether he would or not. I mean, I think that would be the prudent play. I would think if you're him is the toss one of them into a scenario where they could acquire a pretty good defenseman. Chychrun would be a real good fit for the Leafs because he's young. He's got a very good contract for the remaining 3 years that they would have him. And, then hopefully by then the cap goes up a little bit and then they can afford to make things work.
Well, the thing is 91's not going anywhere because there's a no-trade contract. 34 is just too good a player. You can't possibly trade him. He's a franchise player.
No, you can't. If you traded him in a deal to get Chychrun, you get half their team.
And I think they'd give you the whole team for him. You can have your pick. I'd love to see them do something with Clayton Keller, but he makes 7.1, so that doesn't help the Leafs at all. But the other point of it is everybody's going to be trying to pick these guys over at some point, but they don't have any assets to trade. They don't have any real draft picks they can give up, and anybody you're going to get, there's going to have to be a tough decisions made at some point. If this is the way you want to go, if they think this is the group that can do it, then you're just going to have to ride it out, and they're going to have to deal with it at season's end when they have to make room to sign somebody like Jack Campbell, who's going to be looking for a new ticket in a new year, and a few others like Mikheyev if he keeps playing like he is. So all these things are going to come to a head at some point, but for the next 6 months, we don't care about that. It's just about, who they're playing next. And that tonight it happens to be Arizona.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not worried about the regular season. I really am not. I think their defense is not terrible, but the depth of the defense is my concern. And
yes,
like I said, you have one or two guys go down in the playoffs. You're scrambling to put together 6 defensemen that can win in the playoffs. And that's just the bottom line going into the playoffs. So I think forwards, I'm not worried about the forwards at all. The depth up front is amazing. But again, you may have to move one of them to bring in a defenseman. And everybody's talking about Chychrun, and yeah, he would be a great acquisition. But how about a guy who's been around for a while?
Yeah.
That has experience and, has been there and done that, so to speak, as everybody always talks about. I think bringing someone like that in that has, what about, oh gosh, I can't even think of his name, the captain of the Kraken that was in Calgary.
Mark Giordano.
Mark Giordano. So there's a guy right there that you wouldn't have to give up what you would to get Chychrun.
Yep.
You probably could get him for a pretty good bargain price, I would think. And but he brings in that experience.
Absolutely, good call.
He's been around for quite some time, and I think he'd be a big help to their defense.
I couldn't agree more with you. That's exactly the type of guy. But again, whenever the Leafs got back going the other way, do you really want to sacrifice a Liljegren, who you've gone through with 4 or 5 years now? He's just getting to the stage where there's been a lot of guys I talked to in the hockey world that don't think he has it to make it, but he seems to be proving them wrong the way he's played so far this year. Same with Sandin. And the other one that seems to flatline a little bit, what it reminds me of is, and when I'm going to talk about Travis Dermott, a little bit like Todd Gill. He seems to be not improving all that much right now. He seems to be staying the same. He's not bad. He's not great, but he's just steady. But McGill, all of a sudden, just as the experience got more, he got better and better. And Dermott almost looks like he could be that type of defenseman. So you don't really want to give up on guys like that either.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to give up on those young guys, but at some point you got to make a decision, okay? Yes. And I think, this is a year where, hey, the pressure's on. The pressure's on Kyle. The pressure's on everybody in the organization. You need to win a playoff round or two this year, or some heads are going to roll. I mean, it's got to. I mean, it's time to win a couple of rounds in the playoffs, and I'm not sure that with the defense that they have, that they're capable of doing that. Now, Campbell, fortunately, has been playing outstanding and keeping them in games like crazy. I mean, the saves that he is making are, out of this world. He's keeping them in a lot of games. I mean, even last night, he made some great saves and, kept them in the game and give them a chance to win. And that's what he's been doing all year long.
Look, people are talking about the 4-1 give up against Colorado the other night, and I just got to remind everybody that the forwards, not unlike they're trying to make believe forwards, are paid a lot of money to score goals, and occasionally are going to score. And a team like Colorado, who is very dynamic and very good, 4-1 doesn't mean anything. And remember, the Leafs spanked them 8-3 a couple weeks before, so they've got that in the back of their mind as well. That 4-1 lead didn't mean anything that they gave those goals up. And listen, I'd rather have the Leafs being in front trying to protect the lead than had them chase the game, because chasing the game just opens up all kinds of problems. And the way they've been playing, even last night, the way they did it, little penalty trouble in both games cost them. Some, questionable penalties that you got to be a little smarter. The one Richie took in front of the net, and not to pick on him. You got to be a little smarter on that type of stuff, because they're looking for it all the time. But away from all of that, you got to be happy with the way they're playing.
You do, but 2 games in a row giving up a 2-goal lead, and a 3-goal lead. And, that for me, that's not a real good sign. I mean, yeah, you got a point. You lost that one in overtime in Colorado, and then you get a point for winning in the shootout. But there's no shootouts in the playoffs. Let's remember that. And if we go way back, I don't know how many years it was when they had a 4-1 lead going into the third period against the Boston Bruins in Game 7,
2013,
and ended up losing. So the fact that they're giving up these leads, and they grabbed a point, then they grabbed 2 points in the skills competition, as we like to call it. But I mean, hey, you can't do that in the playoffs. If you get into the playoffs, you got to have a structure that doesn't allow teams to come back and send games to overtime.
Well, to your point, I agree, except that this was not 5-on-5 play they gave that up on. They were shorthanded, and the one goal was two inch down, and then Petrone made a good shot. So, that I agree with you to a point, but stay out of the box, number one. But
that's part of it. That's part of the game, though. You can't take those penalties, and the players need to realize that you got a 4-1 lead, you can't afford to take those penalties. And a better structure going in the games and knowing that when you have that 3 or 4 goal lead, that you clamp down and you play real good defensively, and you don't make those mistakes and take those penalties. I think that's the biggest lesson they can learn.
Well, speaking of which, what we want to do upgrade. One of the names we've banded about off the air, we weren't quite confident enough to talk about this one publicly to our listeners, with Evander Kane's name being thrown about. He's the sort of the polarizing. He's the lightning rod, the Antonio Brown, NFL Antonio Brown of the NHL. And here he is. Our thought was, I would have made a pitch for him with San Jose when they was with those San Jose, because they would retain half the salary and go through Arizona, and they would retain part of the salary. If you get him for, at the time, I would have gone to $1.5 million to keep him. And, you're going to put Richie on waivers, which make him expendable. You've got that leadership group with the Jason Spezas and JT and Wayne Simmons, and even the younger guys like, Matthews and Riley. I keep him on the straight and narrow. I would say that, here's just one shot. Now, the story is that Edmonton's very interested. Now, his name is out there, so the price of poker is going up. But there's been a monkey wrench I do see going across Twitter the last hours, that they're now investigating him crossing the border over Christmas time, coming into Canada, and how could he do that? So they're till that gets sorted out, he's on hold again. So this poor kid definitely needs some sort of counseling. But he's the type of forward. Yeah. How about him on the wing with JT? With that aggressive, he's big, strong, tough.
There's no question that there's no question, Mike, that he would be a big asset to the Maple Leafs. And I understand there's 6 teams that are very interested, Toronto being one of them. And you know what? Sometimes you just got to take a chance, take a flyer on a guy who's had many opportunities and screwed up many times, but maybe coming to a place like Toronto and being, in a place where, hockey really matters and everybody knows you, maybe then, you sit back and go, okay, I can't screw up here, or this will be my last opportunity. So who knows? I personally, if it was me, I'd take a run at him.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't you? You put him on the left side with Tavares. Then all of a sudden your forward depth gets even bigger, greater, and it would be unbelievable.
Well, and the other
because he is a good player.
Oh, absolutely, he's a great player, and it was San Jose's best player, and 49 points last year. But imagine it would. A guy like John Tavares, especially the pounding he takes. The wearing that body, you want him fresh by the April. And this would take a lot of that off him, not doing that heavy lifting, because he's playing with a very elite player, skilled player on one side. Obviously, we're referring to Nylander, and the physical part is not his game. But in the playoffs, and you need that physicality, it's actually going to make a difference. But I would suggest that, and the other part about it too is you got to think about it from Kyle Dubas' standpoint, is that in the back of his mind, even though he won't admit this, if the first round of the playoffs, you get stuck with Florida or Tampa, just the luck the Leafs will have once again, this thing the dial turns against you another time. You run the risk that this thing is just not going to end prettily for you, and prettily, I don't know where I came up with that word, but it's not going to end nicely for you on that note. And you could be summoned to the top office. So there has to be some chances taken at some point, as you suggest. And I would make it worthwhile, but I suggest the price of poker, now that so many teams are interested, has gone up. So I don't know if
it'll go up. Yeah, I mean, it'll go up a little bit, but I mean, if you put Richie on waivers, get him down, or maybe move him for that defensive piece that we're talking about. Maybe he could be part of a deal for Giordano or someone of that ilk that would come in and be a real good presence on the back end.
Well, they're going to want Sandin or Liljegren or Dermott, or combination of two of the three to move somebody like Giordano. And then they're not going to give him up and not get something back to replace it with some depth for them also moving forward. And the Leafs don't have draft picks, so they don't, and money doesn't matter. So they're going to have to do something along these lines. So I would think that, just based on all that, there's definitely a change coming at some point, as you and I have talked about endlessly, but we'll have to wait and see how this thing all unfolds. We do have to like the fact that I just wanted to jump on your point there with Kerfoot and McCabe. The thing I love about the way these guys are playing is that it's an old hockey cliche, but they're playing within themselves. And it's very evident. It's confidence. And here's the thing. It's the confidence they're gaining from playing regularly. And look at this Kerfoot. He can play anywhere up and down the lineup. He simplified his game. If a shot is there, he takes it. If it's not, he makes a low-risk pass. Like a good snooker player, it's not what he's making, it's what he's leaving. And you as a player yourself, going on the road, what's the biggest challenge as a player when you played going on, besides the crowd and the home and all the home team and the last change and all that stuff? What was the biggest challenge going on the road as a player?
Well, during my 7 years in Toronto, it was just winning.
Well, I forgot that one. I forgot about that.
I mean, there was a few years where we had good teams, and we were able to win on the road, but we didn't have. And in fairness to all the coaches I had in Toronto, we didn't have that many that were astute enough to be able to make changes in the lineup to combat what the other teams were doing. So that was something that was very difficult, because as a player, you want a coach that when you go into someone's building, he has a game plan. He puts together a game plan to combat what they do, and we never really had that opportunity that often.
Well, the way I would look at it is this. I think anyone can put you on the spot like that, but the way you would define it would be the first 10 minutes you want to take the crowd out of it, so you keep it even. If you can go in the third period within a goal or a flat game, that's all you're looking for, because then it's a shot on goal. And if as you as a road team, if you can do that, to me, you're going to be more successful than you're not.
Yeah, no, there's no question. I mean, that you go in and you're figuring, okay, they're going to come at us pretty hard when they come out of the gate. And if we can weather the storm for 10 minutes and get through that, and then, go into the third period, with a tie or maybe just down a goal, we got a good chance to win. And I think that's probably how you have to look at it, especially when you get into the playoffs. When you get into the playoffs, everybody's revved up and ready to go. If you can weather that first 10 minutes and go into the third period even or only down one, you got a pretty darn good chance of winning, especially for the Maple Leafs with the firepower that they have.
Which is the key thing. And again, with not stating the obvious, you don't want to chase that game, because as a forward yourself, you would go in and the first thing you want to do is you want to bury one, get that lead, make them chase you. But if you sacrifice something along the lines and it reverses and goes against you and ends up in your net, then you're doing a double chase. And then, that makes it even tougher to sort of overcome that. So these are the obstacles. And this is why you see so much the offensive and defensive positioning of teams now is so critical when they make these changes, when when you want that offensive zone face off and you put your guys under, because that's how tight the game has become.
Yep. I mean, it's, coaching is become so important nowadays. Putting the right people on the ice at the right time, those sorts of things. Don't forget, you ice the puck, you try one of those stretch passes, and it's an icing, and you might have guys that are out there for a minute and a half, and they're caught on the ice and they're tired, and there's a face-off in your zone. So you got to think about a lot of things. And coaching is not easy in the National Hockey League right now. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to come in every single night and have your team ready and prepared and to win hockey games.
Well, I would suggest as a bit of a wrap up here, as guys are eyeballing the standings, they want to keep their eye on also the videotapes from the Montreal game plan last year and maybe take a little page out of that booklet of what hard work and commitment and responsibility and accountability will do with maybe not quite as much talent on the other side. And they proved it. And of course they had Carey Price in goal, but that helps. But the fact remains they still had to do it, and they still had to put pucks in the net. And this is what people had better be prepared for moving forward in the next few months.
Yeah, and I think that they understand now. I mean, it's just a matter of going out and getting the job done now more than anything else. I think they know what happened last year. They saw what happened. Montreal was not even close to the team that Toronto was, but they played hard, they played physical, and they ended up winning the series. So I think they learned a lot from that. I believe they have, and I think that perhaps if they get into a situation, they're going to know a little bit more what to do to overcome those types of things, I think, going forward. I hope.
We all do. There's lots of there's thousands upon tens of thousands that are hoping the same thing we are. So, Squid,
yeah,
it's that time again. And I know you're part of the show, so here we go. Now, today's theme, with the possibility of some tough choices ahead for the Leafs, the team's theme is going to lean towards risk. So with bearing that in mind, here's one for you. You either accept the risk of winning or the guarantee of losing. Think about that one.
Yeah. Well, I think that really applies right now to not just the Toronto Maple Leafs, but a lot of teams in the league probably that are looking at a playoff spot. Yeah, I really think, I mean, if you think about it, they haven't really taken any risks in the last however many years, right? I mean, they haven't made any big deals or anything. So, something that could put them over the top, like bringing in Kane or making a move to get a Giordano or somebody like that. Yeah, sometimes you gotta risk something in order to get to the Holy Grail, and maybe that is going to happen this year. Hopefully, I don't know. I don't know if Kyle is a risk taker or not. I don't really know him that well, but hopefully he hears that and ponders that for a little while after they hammer the Coyotes tonight, which I'm sure they will.
Oh, don't say that. Don't say that.
Oh no, that's not even. Trust me, I don't even think it'll be a game.
Well, here, listen. If that quote isn't enough for you, and the fact we use an old Bay Street term, lifting a leg as opposed to risk, try this. I've got a bonus quote for you today that can go right along to sum it up perfectly. If you want a guarantee, buy a toaster. Okay. So.
Well, hey, let's see what happens. I mean, you got a very good team that is positioned very, very well right now. with games in hand on some teams, Florida and Tampa being two of them.
Yeah.
But I think it's time to take a risk to implement something on your club that is going to almost guarantee that you're going to get through that first round and maybe beyond that.
Well, we'll watch with great interest as we always do. And that's all we have for you today, folks. Next week, same time, same place. Don't forget to tune in to our weekly podcast, Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan. Drops Fridays at 6 p.m. This week's guest, Colby Armstrong. Great guy, very funny guy, and it's not hard to see why this guy was so popular with his teammates. So we want to thank you all for listening. Yeah. Enjoy the upcoming games, and we'll see you next week.